On the sacraments, Anglicans sometimes refer to only 2 or at other times 7. Holy Trinity Amblecote, a church in the Church of England, says, "The Church of England believes that there are 7 sacraments. 2 of these, baptism and the Eucharist, communion, Mass, or the Lord's Supper, are considered sacraments ordained of Christ in the Gospels. The other 5 are commonly called sacraments, but not to be counted as sacraments of the Gospel, and these are confession and absolution, holy matrimony, confirmation, ordination, also called holy orders, and unction, anointing of the sick. In Anglicanism, a different emphasis is placed on sacraments by the 2 wings of the Church, Anglo-Catholics and Evangelicals. For Lutherans, today they would normally affirm only 2 sacraments, baptism and communion, though some say Lutherans have 2.5 sacraments, since some Lutherans have considered confession and absolution a sacrament. Moravians have 2 sacraments, baptism and communion, and the same 2 are the only recognized sacraments in Reformed churches. Baptism for all 4 traditions is commonly infant baptism, and it is viewed as valid if done by any mode, whether immersion, pouring, or sprinkling. The most common mode for Anglicans is pouring water, and for the other 3, the mode of sprinkling is most common. On the Lord's Supper, conservative churches in some of these traditions may not allow any professing Christian to receive communion at their churches. The second largest Lutheran denomination in the USA, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, officially practices what may be called closed or close communion, meaning that only other LCMS members or churches the LCMS is in communion with should be permitted to receive communion in their churches. Many of the most conservative Reformed denominations also have restrictions on communion, like the Reformed practice of fencing the table, which can include the church's governing body called a session, interviewing anyone who wants to receive communion before they are permitted to take it. Additionally, the historic views of communion of these traditions differ. Today, the more liberal and ecumenical denominations don't make much of these differences, but the conservative ones will still argue for their position. The Lutheran position is called sacramental union and teaches that Christ's body and blood are really and truly present in the elements, though the bread and wine also are still present alongside them. And the Reformed position is called spiritual presence, meaning that Christ's body and blood are present, but only in a heavenly and spiritual matter. Anglicans have had a variety of views, with some teaching real presence and others spiritual presence, or even a more memorialist view that the elements are only symbols of the body and blood. Moravians hold a position of not defining the way that Christ is present.